Side note before we get started, UEG limited edition holiday ugly sweaters. Grab one now while they're hot.
What is a safe space? In a literal sense, it is a space free of danger, a location where people do not need to be fearful, scared, or on edge. But in a societal sense, at least under contemporary definitions, it is a space where nothing can hurt your feelings. Yes, I'm being a little bit snide here. There is value in the rudimentary concept of a safe space, but the application of that concept has become so demented it is nearly unrecognizable. Recently, I covered the 60 Minutes interview done by CBS where they outright called for YouTube to deplatform and censor anything that is hateful, while acknowledging that hateful is in the eye of the beholder, making it something that is and will always be susceptible to human subjectivity, therefore all but guaranteeing that no true standards or content guidelines can ever be established. This video was, for the most part, received quite well. However, intermittently in the comment section and on other social media, I began to see the accusation that I am merely trying to protect hateful rhetoric, and that some things deviate from common decency so drastically they, as a result of that, deserve censorship for the greater good. I could argue for hours, even days, about the inherent danger of picking and choosing what can and cannot be said or what can and cannot be seen, but the most common counterpoint, which would only be hashed and rehashed in response, is called the slippery slope fallacy. The term refers to a logical fallacy and flawed argument wherein a small point is leveraged in order to claim the likelihood of a larger, even ludicrous consequence. To some, the idea of deplatforming and censoring hateful content, despite that definition being extremely loose and forever flexible, is not only acceptable, it is preferred. When I, or anyone else for that matter, make a claim towards the danger of subjective censorship, the response is rather formulaic. That's the slippery slope fallacy. We just want the Nazis gone, or the bigots gone, or the homophobes gone, etc., etc. And this may be true, in their own mind. This is a noble pursuit that transcends the inherent danger of authoritarian control. But today, I want to discuss something that proves without any shadow of a doubt that the safe space concept has gone too far. This is a leaked section of the TikTok moderator's instruction manual. For those that don't know, TikTok is a relatively new social media platform that allows for peer-to-peer video sharing, lip syncing, and small skits. I have been contacted numerous times by media firms asking me to advertise it on my own channel. It's been undertaking an advertising push of epic proportions, pushing it on a global scale to an audience of around 1 billion users. TikTok, much like many other platforms, including YouTube, is attempting to create a safe space, and the leaked moderator guidelines, first reported on by a German publication called Netzpolitik, clearly show a regulation wherein disabled users' content is labeled Risk 4. This is where we need to get into some definitions. Risk 4 effectively means that content with the tag is not shown outside its origin country. TikTok is a global platform, and because of that, limiting a video's location serving to just one country will severely handicap its viewership. As an example, if YouTube were to limit my content to just the United States, it would mean about half of my audience is just gone. This is also an atypical example because the vast majority of my material is literally made specifically for the United States. So even a creator like myself with hyper-intense focus on a single area would still lose about half of my overall existing reach through a protocol like Risk 4. Now, as a concept, generally speaking, limiting video location serving is obviously necessary. For instance, in some countries around the globe, being gay is a punishable crime. If a creator in the United States uploads a video with, as an example, bisexual themes, it would need to be blocked in certain other countries. That is the policy that YouTube itself currently adopts out of sovereign legal necessity, but that's not what TikTok is doing. TikTok was identifying users who had disabilities or facial deformities, even going so far as birthmarks, indications of Down syndrome or autism, and marking those videos as Risk 4, thereby eviscerating their searchability and exposure. The logic for all of this was cyberbullying. The leaked moderation guidelines very clearly state that Risk 4 should be applied to any video depicting imagery of a subject highly vulnerable to cyberbullying, and that vulnerability was assigned to anyone with an obvious disability, perceived disability, or facial deformity. Further clarification stated that bullying has been proven to cause severe emotional and physical distress, especially in minors. Content of subjects likely to incite cyberbullying will be allowed but marked with Risk Tag 4. Let that sink in for a minute. This moderation also takes place in multiple phases. First, a video is reviewed at or near 50 to 150 views. Then, phase 2 moderation at a separate location occurs within the bracket of 8,000 to 15,000 views, with a final third phase taking place somewhere in excess of 20,000 views. During this review process, user videos are being scanned for the appearance of a facial deformity or disability, because that might cause cyberbullying, which might hurt someone's feelings. So to prevent these extended list of hypotheticals, they kill that creator's ability to gain exposure outright. The pursuit of this mythical and delusional safe space extends so far it is now killing the ability of anyone it deems to be at risk by restricting their reach. This isn't even the end of it either. Further reported leaks indicate that moderation staff were told to wait until a video featuring a disabled user reached somewhere between 6,000 to 10,000 views before manually shutting down its growth. The idea was to allow for enough growth to reward satisfaction, but shut down the possibility of further attention because that further attention held the inherent, persistent, and immutable risk, a risk present in every facet of society without fail, the risk of mean comments. As if all this was not enough, LGBT and overweight users were also often subjected to the same risk factor attribution, meaning the video platform was being controlled from an authoritarian position with the goal of creating a safe space by damaging everyone within that safe space who had not even asked to be there. This is an example of the danger that comes inextricably linked with the protections offered by authoritarian control and censorship. When a platform diverges from the obvious and equal approach of legitimate free speech and instead makes an effort to build safe spaces, it may seem legitimate and valuable in the early stages. It may seem like they are just cleansing the platform of hateful material, but the natural progression of censorship is constant. The endeavor to cleanse all harmful material with loose and weaponized definitions of what harmful even is can only lead to a crawling event horizon that destroys the freedoms it comes in contact with. It starts by shutting down racism, then bigotry, but the true targets do not just throw their hands up in the air and stop. They keep going. It progresses further. Hand gestures are banned because they can mean something racist. Memes are banned because they get adopted and used by fringe groups, but it still does not stop. Eventually, the only way to protect people under this now demented principle of safety from dissenting opinions is to isolate them from the outside world, just like TikTok has done, because that world will never conform to the definitions they wish to impose, and as a result, the very principle so many people somehow support of cleansing opinions they disagree with becomes a prison for them. Speaking of cleansing, that is the exact word that was used in the 60 Minutes CBS interview with YouTube's own CEO. This is a roadmap of the changes YouTube implemented in early 2019. In January, they reduced recommendations of borderline content and videos that could misinform people in harmful ways in the United States. Nowhere in the world could I find a clear-cut definition of what borderline content means. Sometimes they'll say one or two things that it could mean, but they never actually clearly define it, because it cannot be defined and will always increase in scope. In June, YouTube then raised authoritative content in the Watch Next panel for people engaging with borderline content in the United States, and further reduced recommendations to borderline content altogether. The animated picture here is also perfectly fitting, a referee issuing a penalty, because to its very core, this is the process of restricting what people can and cannot do, what they can and cannot see, because of what might happen, possibly. Every certainty in life is only certain till it's wrong. Hundreds of years ago, everybody knew that the Earth was the center of the universe. The authoritative voices said it was, so how could it not be? In 1986, on April 25th, everybody knew that an RBMK nuclear reactor could not explode. The authority said so. The party of Soviet Russia said so. How could it not be true? A day later, Chernobyl exploded. The list of times authoritative voices were and are wrong every single day is growing. But YouTube is opting to eliminate borderline information and promote authoritative content instead, inching further down the very same road that TikTok is on, and they don't stop or turn back, they always keep going. The harsh reality is that pursuing the concept of safe spaces is a doomed undertaking that can only result in a slowly clenching vice of restricted freedoms, while an overarching authority attempts to eliminate groups of people that will never be gone and will never change their minds. The inevitable result is that the very same regulations imposed to protect certain groups will end up harming them, just like TikTok tried to protect disabled users from possible cyberbullying by killing their channels. It isn't a slippery slope fallacy. It's a well-proven historical progression where information control, designed to impose an authoritative will on the people for their own good, ends up being used improperly and hurting the very same people it was meant to protect. When the world doesn't change, when the risk of what might happen remains an immutable truth, inclusion and safety becomes a constant state of exclusion and danger. Like it or not, social media has become a method of self-expression in recent years, but when that self-expression is not only forced to conform to some mythical and impossible safe space doctrine, but also filtered through a nebulous rule set of what can and cannot be said, thus effectively limiting self-expression only to what is deemed acceptable and safe, it loses its own identity. Many of these platforms were founded on the principle of giving everyone a voice, but now they are taking those voices away for the people's own good and promoting the authority. It sounds conspiratorial. It sounds like some sort of tinfoil hat 1984 doomsayer ranting from a random online YouTuber, but failing to challenge the authority with our own voice is accepting that whatever they allow you to think, say, and do is what you will think, say, and do. And I, for one, while watching the constricting regulations of YouTube, TikTok, and other social media all over the globe tighten, find myself increasingly unable to ignore it. Sadly, there's not a whole lot I can do. The best I can do is start looking for alternatives to branch out on, such as Storyfire and BitChute. I'm evaluating both of those to see if it's feasible to expand, and then, who knows, someday maybe switch entirely, but it's a long process. That's it for today. To anyone who wants to make the argument that, well, some stuff is harmful, so it's good that it's censored, just don't. Just don't do it, because people like you help make the whole demented thing possible. That's it for today. If you want to support, there are links down below: Twitter, merch, Patreon. Yes, I know that pretty much every single platform I am on or that people can support on is subject to the same censorship garbage, but it's not like there's a lot of alternatives, and even the ones that there are, sometimes not even really possible to consider for entirely separate reasons. But yeah, that's enough. I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.